Hi everyone, and welcome back to Kimbo's Comfort Kitchen. And today we're going to do a very simple recipe, but you just got to be really careful because A, it gets really hot. We're making candied potatoes, Danish candied potatoes, which is a staple for any festive meal that we do, Christmas or anything that we're celebrating. Actually, as a family, we love to have it as an addition. But we're making caramel. We're caramelizing sugar with the potatoes, and we'll show you how to do that. And be really careful, as I said, because it gets really hot. So let's get into the kitchen. And oh, wait a minute, we're in the kitchen. Let's get going. All right, so to get started, we're going to take these new potatoes, and this is actually the day before that I'm going to make the candy glazed potatoes, and I'm going to put these in cold water. It's cold water, not hot water. And I'm going to put it on heat on high, bring it to a boil, and as soon as they're par cooked, which will be about 10 minutes, then I'm going to take them out, I'm going to drain them, and then I'm going to peel them, and I'm going to set them aside for the next day. I want them to be cold and dry. Alright, so I've taken these and drained them. These are new potatoes. Alright, and it was about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, but the way to test is pull one out and then cut through it. And this is what you're looking for. Okay, so there's no bone inside it, but you can see how the center part here is just about cooked, but not quite. That's actually perfect for what we're looking for. And this is my grandfather's. This was used to hold potatoes. And the way we peel them, because they're too hot to handle, you just scrape them with a dinner knife, like that. And you don't have to do them as hot as I'm doing, because I've got fingers that are made of Teflon from so many years in the kitchen. But you can let them cool down a bit. But you do want to scrape them, peel them, in other words, while they're still warm. It's a lot more difficult when they're cool. I mean, you can wait until they're cool, but who wants to deal with a cool potato? Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do to all of these. And then I'm going to put them into a bowl, like that. And I'm going to let them sit overnight. You can let them rest outside. You don't have to put them in the fridge. Just let them rest the way they are. And it's important, though, that you let them dry out. And when they're warm like this, all the moisture will go out of them. And that makes for perfect caramelized potatoes the next day. Okay? All right, so here's the second part of what we call caramelized potatoes, or boonkartofler. These have been sitting out on the counter, drying out since yesterday. I peeled them and just let the heat take care of the rest, and they're ready to go. And I'm now going to make a caramel using a non-stick pan. A lot of times the Danes like to use a cast iron pan, but it's a lot more difficult, I find. So when in doubt, go the easy way. I'm using 2 parts butter, 3 parts sugar, and I've turned the stove on to about medium, just past medium high. I'm going to let that melt, and rather than bore you with waiting for all that to happen, we'll be right back. Okay, so here we are. We've now got caramelized sugar. Don't want it too dark, but enough that it's going to melt the butter when I put it in. And there we go. So we're going to let the butter melt into the sugar. And I haven't stirred the sugar. I didn't use a spoon or anything. I just let it caramelize on its own. Especially with a non-stick pan, you don't have to really worry about it that much. I'm just going to wait for the butter to melt. And like a lot of good things, it takes time. So you just have to wait. I've got the pan on 3/4 heat right now, but I'll be adjusting that later. So let's move and mix the butter. And some of the moisture is bubbling off. And I want it to be, I want to wait for it to stop sizzling. Well, not altogether, but most of it, which gets rid of most of the moisture before I put the potatoes in. And that's actually a really good liquefied position I've got right now, if that makes any sense. So caramel, and it's starting, you can start to see it's starting to get darker. You know, you'll be careful now because you don't want it to go too dark or it'll burn. And that's really a big problem. Now when I add these potatoes in, it's going to drop the temperature down substantially right away. And that'll stop it from burning. But there we go. And again, I'm not going to use a spoon at this point. I'm simply going to shake the pan and move them around and get them coated. You see how it's spotty right now, which means it's the temp's low. And we just let it keep sizzling. I know, very technical term, sizzling. And by the way, be really, really careful because sugar, as I'm sure you know, has a really high temp. So if you get splattered by this, it's going to hurt. Be careful. Now we've got a pretty good coating here as I stick my finger into the hot sugar. Now this is going to take about 15 minutes or so. You can't really rush this. But you want the potatoes to come to temp. And as they do, the sugar will eventually start to attach itself to the outside of the potatoes, which is what we're looking for with brune kartofler, or candied potatoes, or caramelized potatoes. And we'll get back in a couple minutes. Okay, so about 3 or 4 minutes have gone by, and you can see that the sugar is bubbling, and it's really starting to caramelize. And I'm just going to let this continue right now, and I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Not a lot, but down to about almost half heat instead of 3/4 heat. And as the sugar cools in the next few minutes, it'll start to stick a little bit more to the potatoes. So as you can see, I've been letting the sugar cool a little bit, and I just keep flipping it a bit more, and you can see that the potatoes are becoming more and more coated as the temperature of the sugar or the caramel starts to cool. Altogether, we're talking about, I don't know, 10 minutes right now. Will be another 5 minutes. So at this point, I'm going to turn the heat off completely, and I'm just going to wait a minute or two while the caramel starts to cool down, and I'm going to toss it a few more times like this, and it'll stick nicely to the sides of the potatoes, and then we'll plate. Alright, so it's about 15 minutes now, and I've been gradually tossing the candied potatoes, and you know what? We're about ready to go. And this is what they should look like. Voila! Anyway, there you go. Caramelized candied potato, Danish candied potatoes. Og brun kartofler. And værsgo.